I'm going to start this process of this blog about the drawing, the importance of the drawing underneath the 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 images, and really I always thought of myself as a maker of images. Supposed to say you're an artist or you're a painter or you're a creative person, but I think I make images, and that was the story of the film that was done of me in '77 by Pablo Fresconi and Nancy Selzer, and for PBS and other places. Anyway, it's the way of looking. It's a way of seeing that the arm, the hand, and all that we've talked about before, but it's that flow, and it's the flow of the lines that are so important to me, that they stay in the work, that I actually draw them twice. Once I draw with a pencil, like what I'm doing out here in this 30 by 40, and I draw with my large jet black Jerry Artarama pencil, and I like it doesn't roll because it's got the sides, but I like what it feels like to have a big pencil in my hand when I'm doing these larger pieces. And so I draw a continuous flow. If it's not flowing, I have to stop and say to myself, it's not flowing. That's not going to work. I don't care how well I could draw. In all the studies that I did over the years, in 21 years of teaching life drawing, I wanted the model to feel like they were moving, that they were part of a pose, that you felt their bodies. In this case, you felt there's this pain, this happiness, this whatever is going on in the faces, that you feel those faces, that it reflects a multiple complex of images that tell a story. And how we get to that point is by drawing first and then going to the painting. And let's look at the drawing here first. This is a 30 by 40, as my boards, as we talked about before. These are those wonderful boards, and that are 100% rag and all that, but they're heavy duty boards, and they come from the 1890s. This is an illustration board by Strathmore. And I could do this drawing very quickly, but I've been drawing in my head. And in my head is not this, but it's the start of this. And one thing leads to another for my kind of drawing. That's the important thing. I was trained in realism. I was trained as a portrait artist. I was teaching life drawing for 21 years, correcting the model's feet or the leg or something that was off. But I always go back to what is me. And of course, my mask that we've talked about before. But this is inside the inside of the drawing. The drawing, not just as a drawing, but as a feeling, as a sensitivity to the human complex being. That complex is in these drawings, if they work. If they don't work, it's not there. For me, I have to have that in there. Okay, let's look at this over here. I'm making studies and trying different tonalities of watercolor. And there's the drawing underneath. There's the complexity of the human drama in this case, and the looseness of watercolor, and the more subtle colors than I might have in my larger pieces. But many times I have these kinds of colors in there playing them against the brighter colors of the fluid acrylics. But for me, watercolor is wet, and we've talked about this before, but the watercolor is wet, and that tells the story of watercolor. Watercolor. And that's what this is about here. That this is one big shape making all this complex part of the human drama. Sometimes I like to work with an idea, inside an idea, inside an idea, or the drama inside the drama, inside the drama. But what's important for me is that in this case, it's working together color-wise. And one of the colors that are very important to me in this process is that as I keep looking for different colors is the indigo blue that Da Vinci Fluid Acrylics just came out with, and over the Indie ink gives me this flat, like a turtleneck sweater feeling here. And then that's very important to have that in there as against this with the blue over it. Here is the indigo blue by itself, but here is it with over the black. Again, the black is Indie ink, the indigo is the fluid acrylic. Many times I'm mixing the colors on the canvas or the board or the paper. The reason is that I can see it easier than many times I have lots of different palettes and I mix a lot, but when I'm doing this in layers, I'm always working in layers, and I'm thinking of layers of the human being, the human mind in layers. And because I was trained also in psychology and all that kind of thinking, I feel like it's this importance of the layers giving a depth to the color. Even though I want it on a flatter surface, I want something to show with bright colors and rhythms. Rhythm, the importance of rhythm, and the importance of using rhythm with the colors. When we look at the colors, that talk about rhythm, like rhythm in nature. And nature is just a pile of rhythms put together. And I think a painting is a pile of rhythms put together. It could be all one color, like color field painting in the 60s or early 70s, or but there's something that has to be in there that for me, this is for me for my artwork, I have to have the rhythms going in and flowing. The piece has to flow. There has to be a flow. And the process that I'm looking at is in the layers. These are 4 layers to get this to happen right here. It doesn't, but to look spontaneous. Spontaneity is an important part of my work, and it gives it a life. If it doesn't have that life, then I feel like it's dead. It's literally dead. Here I've kind of almost a spaceship type shape going on in this one. I wanted something that's really a different shape that I have here. Again, to get this green is not just that green that looks like it's just put on. There's a lighter green underneath it, and so when you get up here, that lighter green shows up more up the upper part than the lower part. We're working in the process of multicolors that come together as a unit. I don't want any one color just to sit by itself. I want it to be part of the bigger picture. Just as I want human beings to be part of the bigger picture, I want the colors to be part of the bigger picture. Let's look over here and we'll talk about what I've been doing here. Here you can see I'm playing with these airbrush paint and using them in small areas as highlights, but not as an end in themselves. They have to work within the thing. Let's look at what they are. These are made for the airbrush primarily, and consequently they come in small bottles. And when you squeeze out one of these, you just put out a little bit. Because that's all I'm going to use is a little bit. Sometimes they work very well, and sometimes they don't do what I want them to do, and I go back with a different paint. And one of the paints that I can always go back to is the extra fluid, golden extra fluid, which is also made for the airbrush as well as painting. These obviously are made to be painted with. The airbrush, I'm using the airbrush paints with a brush, not an airbrush, because I always feel the airbrush is too mechanical for me. Other people, they like it, great, God bless them. But for me, so I go back to these. These are the extra fluid. Like this one is called a Spalding Gray. What we're looking at is really very thin paint. And what's happened is that they can make paint now so thin that the pigments are so refined down that I have a wide variety of different kinds of pigments. Here's a decorator's kind of acrylic. That's, well, and it's even, you can see that deco art, it's just the decorator paint. But it's a more opaque when I want an opaque but small amounts of it. I don't want to use this in a big area, and they don't come in big bottles. That tells you just by the size of the bottle what it's for. Now, an airbrush obviously sprays all over, but it's a spray. That's very different than painting it with a brush. Let's look over here where I put some of this. These are Dr. Martens, and these are the Indie inks, the color Indie inks from Dr. Martin that are permanent. They're permanent ink, and they're waterproof, bleed proof, and all that sort of thing. But the important thing is that I can use them because they're made to paint with a brush, and it's easy. And we'll put it on certain areas. Let's take and look at how we're going to do this. One way is, here's an orange. This orange and this orange. This is a fluid acrylic. This is a Dr. Martens. And I may just do this sometimes. I may just want to get in there and gives it another dimension. This will dry pretty much the way it went on. So I get that dimension. All of a sudden that orange has a dimension that it didn't have when it was just the fluid acrylic. Sometimes I want that flatness of just the fluid acrylic, but sometimes I want that dimension to happen. That's the difference. Now when I do that orange, I might want to take some of that orange up into here, and it barely shows up on the black. It's not made to cover dark surfaces. It's made to be actually on a white paper or a cream paper. If I take this orange and I go over here and I want something along here, you see how that almost turns like a soft brown. And yet the blue, I want the blue to come into that soft brown, but I also wanted to be aware of that. I got that with orange. This orange made a brown when it hits a light blue or a dark blue. So by doing that, it's a layering of two different media, and it's in the mixed media that so much can change the colors. If I did that with an orange acrylic over the orange, it would blend in more. But with this, I can have it go on real thin and not have it take over, but just to be part of. Again, we're just going back in, seeing where it goes, and just barely there. It doesn't have to say, "Hi, I'm orange." It just has to say, "Hello, I'm orange," on an orange. So, as you noticed, I'm using a small brush for this because I just want it to be a small line. I'm not interested in making big areas of the Dr. Martin dyes. Dr. Martin dyes, they call it Bombay, or that's because they're India ink, but in color. Years ago, Dr. Martens were used for anatomy illustration, and they were never meant to be sold as a painting. But nowadays, they make permanent inks that are light fast, that are quite good quality colors, and pigment is gotten down so fine that we can make it like just a pigmented ink. If I come in here with a little bit of this red from the airbrush, I may just want a little bit of red right here. Again, it's that small brush. I'm not covering big areas with it. I'm just making little areas. When you're working with any of these paints, be sure to keep them wet, the brush is wet, and to keep it in a bucket of water. All these paints dry quickly. The Dr. Martin dyes slowest, the acrylic the fastest, and the airbrush is meant to go on all kinds of like metal and it's the car paint. A lot of it is the same formula they would use for car paint. But the difference is that the colors are fine art colors. It doesn't mean that you can't have fine art colors on your car. Some cars do, but it means that you wouldn't want to necessarily use them to work with the other colors. all these fluid acrylics, the Goldens and the Da Vincis, are all part of this fluidity that's occurring in paint, and they get more and more fluid, and to an opaque titanium white, a traditional titanium white, that becomes transparent practically. A yellow, that's a Hansa yellow light. When I really want a bright light yellow, I go towards this. If I want a yellow that's more yellowishy, I might use, this is a cadmium yellow medium. That's the middle yellow in the cadmium. If I had a range of yellows, this would be the middle yellow. You can go down to these Canadian-made colors by TriArt. And this is called Indian yellow. And Indian yellow used to be made from urine. And now in the 21st century, they can duplicate the color of the urine, the color of urine, but have it so that it's acrylic. This company is very good at making a variety of small colors, and I recommend them as small. Again, all these colors down here are for small. Another new color from Da Vinci is transparent brown, and that works very well as an underpainting, as making shadows, making things a little different. So when I'm working in layers, I may have this over the pencil. Then I go back in with the ink, the India ink over some of this, letting some of it come through. It's important that all these colors get to say something in the piece, but don't take over the piece. So let's go back and look at this again from a distance and see what I'm talking about. Not taking over, but the black setting the mood. And the black may need to be painted more. Another layer. I got 3 layers of black on there. I want different parts of it with different layers, the black to show that it's painted, but at the same time I want it to be set a mood. Let's go in here and see a finished piece with the frame on it that we've used in other blogs. But this is from the series that's part of my calendar, and Conversations in the Night. That's what it looks important, that you have a black frame on this. You don't want to put a gold frame or even a white neutral frame, because it'll distract from these colors. I don't need anything distracting from these colors, because I work for all these colors to work together, and all the changes that go in it, all these subtle changes like here, are part of the process of working in layers, working in mixed media. Here I scratch in like if I was doing a scratch board, which I do a lot of on the mustache here. But that's all, the only place I used it. I'm not going to use it any place else. I don't have to repeat that. I don't have to make it happen someplace else because I want this. No, this is by itself because the mustache is an important part of the character. These are characters. They're not caricatures, they're characters. Caricatures are things that, you know, guys used to do with pastels or whatever on the people and kind of have fun with the people. This is not making fun of people at all. This is different. This is their character of them, and they become their own person, their own image, and in the end, they may be their own mask.